We're going to get started here. Thanks everybody for joining us live, or if you're watching this with the YouTube recording, thanks for checking out Esports Ed. This is the once a month Bytespeed Esports webinar that we've tried to pull together experts from around the community, whether it be high school or college, to talk about some of the really finer details of running the esports program. This is installment number 4 here in October. And we're going to talk all about how to prepare for collegiate recruiting. So with us tonight, we have, as far as panelists go, my name is Josh Knutson. I'm the Esports and VR Solutions Director here at Bytespeed. I've been with the company for about a year and a half. We are a one-stop shop IT solutions manufacturer. So we do everything from desktops to laptops to servers, and everything else in between. Esports being a big part of kind of our high-end builds and kind of a big focus for us. We're a company of gamers and we love helping out. With me today is Aaron from Central Methodist University, and I'll let him introduce himself before we get going here.
Yeah, so I'm the director and head coach of Central Methodist University. I've been with the program since day one, which is about 4 years ago. It seems not too long ago, but 4 years ago. And I took over the head coaching role last year. So I'm going into my second year being in this head coaching position, as well as the director role for the university.
Awesome. And thanks again for joining with us tonight. We've loved being able to work with Central Methodist at a professional level, but also Aaron and I have known each other for a few years. We actually met in the Atlanta airport at like 1:30 in the morning a couple of years ago. It's always been great to bump into Aaron and work with him and see, the program at Central Methodist grow. So we're really happy to have him be a part of the webinar tonight. So the topics for today, we're going to talk all about recruiting and kind of what that looks like. Going from the different perspectives, starting with kind of as students, what should you be looking for in a college? We'll talk about some of the important factors about choosing a school to apply to try and try out for. We'll look at what college coaches are looking for in their student athletes. We'll talk a little bit about kind of what the general recruiting cycle looks like. That differs from school to school, but there are some things that we'd love to hit on tonight. Talk a little bit about what students can do to get prepared. I know like a lot of esports athletes in high school might not have ever thought about playing in college, or they might not be, ever exposed to that world of like, oh my gosh, how do I even think about making that next step or taking that jump. So we'll talk about a little bit of some tips to get prepared. And then finally, before a Q&A session at the end here, let's talk about how high school coaches can help their players through this process and be an active role in seeing their players move from their high school team to a college team and beyond. And then, like I said, we'll have time for Q&A here at the end if we don't totally run through the clock. So feel free, if you have questions throughout the evening, to type out in the Q&A section or the chat. We'll try and answer those as they roll in. And if you're watching this as a video afterwards on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment with a question, and we'll try and be active in answering those as well. So let's dive in. And first thing we're going to do is just talk about what to look for in a college. And I think one of the main things that we really need to look at before we talk about how esports fits into this is the school a right fit for your student in the first place? Aaron, I would love for you to kind of talk about, because I know you've had some really great experience working in admissions and doing some other things. Can you talk about why this is such a big focus point for a lot of students about, finding the right school before you even think about, academics and all the things after that?
Yeah, so previously, before my head coaching role and just assistant coaching role in esports, I was an admissions counselor for the university for a number of years, as well as a traditional sports coach. And one thing that we hit on and we really try to educate not only the high school seniors, but any student that was looking to go to our university or any university in that matter, is just finding the right fit. Is it the right size? Is it the right location? Is it somewhere that's going to be enough distance from home to where you're not going home all the time, but far enough away that you're not going to have have that parental presence necessarily on campus. So those are the things that we really highlight on at the beginning of the process with students, and then kind of going further from there after we've kind of established, okay, this is a good size, this is a good class size for us, this is the type of education that I want, it's in the location that I want. So many times I can't tell you, when kids from the West Coast that are used to the 70, 80 degree, those are the lower temps, and they're going to Missouri or North Dakota or wherever the case may be, and they see snow for the first time, and they're like, "Well, this is miserable." And I'm like, "Well, that's why you have to scout out your school. You have to know, okay, what am I going to deal with? What is the weather like? What is the crime like? What is the amenities around the university that would contour my college experience to what I want it to be?" And then after you kind of make that initial, I would say, fielding out point, then you kind of dig more in depth with the university. Okay, does it have my academic requirements? Does it have my major? What type of social or professional organizations can I be a part of? All that types of stuff. And then it comes to esports. What are the intangibles that each esports program has, and what am I looking for my specific purpose? What am I as an esports player going to look to be a part of? What are my hard fast, this is what I want, and if they don't have it, that's kind of a deal breaker type situation. But yeah, those are the type of things we look for. Obviously, we have kids, and I talk to kids all the time, and um, they solely focus on the esports aspect, and I have to tell them, I'm like, okay, that's great, I love that, you're passionate, I love that you're excited, but have you thought about these types of things? Have you thought about the travel element? Have you talked about the expenses going from across country, or even 5 hours from home? There are travel expenses that occur, so it's just understanding those. I like to say, those unexpected costs, that, as you will, that doesn't always, list in the overall cost of the college, but those costs that you will accumulate as a collegiate student.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an important thing, like you touched on, that you're not seeing the forest for the trees kind of thing, where you're so focused in on like, that's the esports team I want to play for. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to study. I'm in a totally different living environment. Cause it really is your home for 9 months out of the year. Making sure that all of those kind of prerequisites fit what you're hoping to do in college is a really important factor in staying at the right school and having a really great experience over the 4 years or the 2 years if you're going to a junior college or something like that. Just kind of making sure that everything fits. And then we kind of take a look at esports and how do I get involved, and how can we have a successful playing experience, or working with broadcast and any of the other roles there. So yeah, I love that, we can kind of take a look from 10,000 feet down and say, okay, these are the important factors, and this is why I should consider college A versus college B. And I think that's an important thing that not a lot of 18-year-old seniors ever think about until it's like, boom, you're right in it. And you're like, where the heck do I go to college? So yeah, definitely things, if you're a guidance counselor in high school, or you're a high school coach, to be in that process of helping your students, maybe talk about things like, are you comfortable living 4 hours away from home? Are you, do you want a big class size? Do you want a small class size, or other things like that? So super important things to look for, and then kind of taking a look at their esports program as a secondary to say, yes, this is a program I want to be a part of after I know the school is something that I want to be a part of. So great insight there. Thanks so much, Aaron. Moving on here to, the flip side of the coin is, what do coaches look for in students? And and kind of like laying out the slides here, I have to say that this was like, okay, there's no way we can fit every single thing that a coach looks for in a student on the board here, but I just have a couple listed. Obviously, if we're looking about, hey, I'm going to recruit a League of Legends player, I'm going to look at their ability, what other skills do they have that kind of make for a good, collegiate League of Legends player. And then also, on the flip side, looking out of game, what are some of the things that make him a good fit for our program? Can you talk about, with your recruiting for the Central Methodist team, kind of what are some of like the big benchmarks that you look for when you start to look at recruiting students for next year?
Yeah, so you've touched on a lot of them. Obviously, the first and foremost is, do they have the ability that would strike our interest? And that's really, it's across the board. Some universities look for the highest caliber player. Other universities like ours, we have the fortunate enough to have two teams. So we have an academy and a varsity. So I'm looking at both the players that I can develop that show the potential, but also the kids that are at the pinnacle and how can we kind of get them into how to play CMU style esports. So that's kind of the first initial thing. And then obviously we look for leadership qualities. And leadership qualities don't have to be necessarily the guy that's in the front and taking charge and everything like that, but ability to lead in game. So if a team's backed up to against the wall, who's the first player that says, okay, we're going to break out of this, we're gonna go shadow the Ryan's shield and get out of this situation and flip the script, so to speak. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the shot caller at all times, but just somebody that knows and just has the wherewithal to take initiative in that regard. One thing that I tell all my students that I recruit, no matter if they're my best player, or my developmental players, is, academics come first. I love that you're passionate about esports. I love that you're focus on your game in and out of practice, but it really comes down to, are you making the grades, are you getting to graduation, are you going into the field or major that you are intending to go into? And that's one of the things at CMU we strive to have. So academically, a student can do amazing in high school or just mediocre, and then I see them come to college at so many different universities, and then they just fall through the cracks, so to speak. They're like, oh, I'm gaming, I'm doing what I love, like that's great, and then they don't focus on the intangibles of, okay, what am I getting the grades? Am I going to class? Am I progressing towards my degree? Because ultimately, that's why you're there. I would love for everybody to go pro, and I think every coach would, to have that recognition. But as you know, in today's world, it's like 2%. It's even lower than traditional sports. That esports players go pro, so they have to have a backup. So having that background in marketing, or having that background in communications or sports management or computer science or whatever the case may be, they can go to an organization, a pro organization, and have a job right out of college, making great money and seeing the world. So that's the type of pieces that we instill in our players from the very beginning, to make sure that they understand that we're gonna put you where you need to be, but you also have to follow the protocol as far as academics, and then just be a coachable player. You might not be the best player, but as long as you're going to take our direction and take um, our guidance and just say, yes coach, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it to the best of my abilities, then that's the type of player we want. Even if they mess it up 9 times out of 10, at least they're giving me 110% day in day out, and that's the type of player that we look for, and that's the type of player we really like to be around. And that's kind of why we built our university around those types of players that just buy in. And I can tell you the esports season's way more grinding than any traditional sport, just because the only off season is winter, and even then it's not even literally an off season.
Yeah,
So
it's like 2 weeks for
yeah.
Christmas break, and that's it.
So I mean, for these players to play all year round at such a high intense level, they have to have that coachability, have to have that drive, and just that buy-in from the university. So that's really what we look for our players, and it's a formula that's worked. We haven't necessarily. We're in year 3, so obviously year 4, year 5, we're looking to make a lot more, a lot more. Noise, so to speak, but we're definitely where we want to be, and we're just putting the pieces together right now. So
Definitely. And I think a lot of these kind of skills or things that coaches look for applies to, it obviously applies to your varsity players and your JV players kind of in that developmental state. But I think it also applies to kind of like the support staff. There are schools now out there that are, creating out broadcast teams. You look at, the Boise States of the world, or, kind of the things that Illinois Wesleyan is starting to do with creating more content and having more students involved with the program. So that coachability, the demeanor, the academics, the ability, all that stuff can apply to your social media team, to your casters that are coming in and working with your players every day. I think it's an important thing to remember that esports programs are growing into more than just players at the collegiate level, and all of these things apply when you want to be a part of a group or a team like this, no matter what your role is. So I think it's a cool opportunity to get a lot of students involved, and the highlights and the things that coaches are looking for in those players and in those recruits are often seen in every role. So
Yeah.
yep, yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I know one of the questions, we can talk about it now, is about the back of the house. And that's kind of what you touched on. That's one thing that has been big for us is just, finding those students, the high school programs, as they have these students coming through that are interested in those types of programs, letting us know. That helps us just be more, I guess, ideal with what we're trying to do, because right now, we have a couple students that want to go into organizations or orgs for esports, so they're getting their feet wet with using our program, being able to stream, being able to cast, being able to run social media, or just being a manager. I can't tell you, Josh knows, being one director and having multiple teams, it's not easy, because you have to have all of the organization in the world, and even then it still doesn't work. So just having these players that are willing to take on these roles is just tremendous for any type of program, especially for the bigger programs like Josh alluded to with Boise State. Anytime they can get in on the ground level right away, that only gives them so much more experience to where they can put it on the resume and say, yeah, I've done this, or yes, I can go and do this, and not have any training whatsoever aside from the different protocols and that type of thing with the specific organizations that they decide to go to.
Definitely. Okay. So let's talk about kind of like the recruiting cycle. So this is a term that traditional sports uses all the time, and every sport, every college is different, but there are some similarities. So what I did is, like Aaron mentioned, in my past life, I was a college director, and I kind of pulled together my annual schedule. And I want to, Aaron, feel free to jump in here whenever, and talk about kind of how you guys do it at Central Methodist. But there's some kind of key things that happen throughout this recruiting cycle of, getting in touch with a student to getting them signed and getting them on campus. For us in the fall, we started, our recruiting cycle almost as soon as September came. You get a sense of which students, are there for your year, and where your holes are. Typically, a lot of mid-sized programs, kind of like the Central Methodists of the world, like the Jamestowns of the world, they have a recruiting number in mind of the number of students they want to ideally recruit. And then they have, hey, if we get more than that, awesome. But a lot of times they'll have like a goal for the year of how many students they would want to bring in on scholarship or on partial scholarship or whatever that might be. And then they start talking with schools. One of the first things I did during the year was reach out to the high school coaches that I had relationships with in the past, and try and develop things like a pipeline. So for us, it was ironically enough, reaching out to a lot of schools in the Illinois, in the Chicago area, and some kind of down in South Dakota, Minnesota, kind of in our geographic area, and kind of just looking where we've had success, where we've seen players come and sign out, and just talk to those coaches and say, hey, high school coach, who do you have this year that you're excited about? Who are your seniors? Do any of them have goals of playing in college? And then, starting to, get in touch with those players and kind of learn what they're doing, and start keeping tabs on those recruits that you want to potentially offer scholarships to. And that looks a lot different, depending on who's doing the recruiting and what school is doing, that process. But a lot of times it's watching film, pulling up streams of the high school teams when they're playing their, during their fall seasons, or maybe, past years, if you can get the VODs. Like I said, calling and talking to coaches directly, running searches through recruiting databases like Be Recruited and NCSA. That's the Next College Student Athlete. And then, also actually just calling players and talking with them on the phone and talking about, what their goals are. Aaron, do you guys do anything different in the fall, or kind of, start things off similar, different? Can you talk about what you guys do?
Yeah, so for us, it's a little different. Obviously, the timeline's similar, but we, as soon as our spring ends and we know our fall class is coming, we typically know that by right around May, typically. Then we'll start on our next class, or our class of juniors that just became seniors. We do a great job of just contacting them over summer, just because summer is an ideal time for us to have not only kids to come out and visit, but also that's kind of a downtime for me to be able to sit down and really dedicate time to them and be able to run some tryouts with our teams, with our new incoming players, and kind of just see where they fit in.
Definitely.
And then once fall hits, then I'm just hitting the ground running, trying to get as much recruiting done as much as I can with the time allotted during our season. And a benefit, like you alluded to, was just being able to being able to just have those high school connections. One of the beneficial things that I've had with Missouri is Missouri has a whole high school Discord just strictly for Missouri, and I know Illinois, Michigan, all those other states have the same thing. So
Yep.
for us to be able to jump in those Discords and post, hey, we're having to try out this day, this time. We have these types of spots open, or whatever the case may be, and being able to just post that out there, and then having some coaches reach out, and then reaching out to my coaches that I have great connections with. Great example is Francis House Central in St. Louis. They're a big public school, and I can usually contact them and contact the other bigger names high schools, and just start off those conversations, and just saying, hey, who do you have this year? Who do you like? And then kind of starting those conversations off with those players and getting them in some scrimmages with our players and seeing if they're a good fit. One thing that I've done that's been unique, and I don't think any other program has necessarily done this, is we actually host high school tournaments, and they're individual tournaments for scholarships to CMU. So we actually had 3 this month. So 3 of my Saturdays are high school tournaments. But
Mhm.
this coming Saturday for Halloween, we're actually hosting a $40,000 Rocket League tournament where it's 1v1, and it's open to any and all high school students. So freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And that's just a great opportunity for these kids to come out and compete. And there's tangible money. Like, you're getting a $40,000 scholarship to CMU on top of an academic scholarship. So ideally, that's a lot of money on the table
Yeah.
for just one weekend. Um, so for them, it's just a great time for them to show what they have to do. We've done it for Rainbow Six, Fortnite, and Overwatch now. So Rocket League is the one that's coming up this weekend, so we're excited about that. But like you said, once winter comes, that opens up a lot more visits for us, just because we have a little bit more downtime. We have a little bit more signing days, which I'm actually doing a couple signings on Monday for our full, and then just kind of like finalizing our spring. So um, for us, we do a lot of transfers as well. So transfers are our winner as well. So it's
Sure.
just not only geared towards high school students. It is also about those 2-year transfers, and then we just try and get them finalized for the fall and the spring, and have them start practicing with us, so that the transition to college isn't as hard. I hate to have a freshman come in day one and say, okay, now I want you to learn every type of situation or strat that we run. Also, you have first day classes and you have homework. Like,
Right.
that's just so intimidating for any high school student, especially a freshman, to come in and do that. So we try and do a lot of our onboarding throughout the summer so that they get acclimated. So once they get here in August, they're hitting the ground running. It's just like clockwork, and then all they have to do is kind of add in that academic piece to their schedule. So it is a lot, but our guys do a great job of just getting on board. Our guys and girls do a great job getting on board. But yeah, so that's kind of our schedule.
Sure. Yeah. And like I said, every school kind of does things differently, just kind of based on, do they have rolling admission? Do they have, things like, specific signing days where they only sign people on, hey, we're going to do January 1st. We're going to sign our whole team that day. Or there's other sports that have like, you can't sign before this day. Esports doesn't have those restrictions, but there are some schools that kind of make an event out of it, which is kind of cool. Aaron touched a little bit on having prospective students jump into workouts and scrimmages with the current campus team. That's a great scouting tool for colleges. And you'll find that that's a pretty common thing no matter what program you talk to. Esports, we have a really cool situation to where, if I'm a high school senior sitting at home and I have a free Wednesday night and I'm looking to go to Central Methodist, let's just say, if I've talked to Aaron and set up a schedule, I can from home jump into the Central Methodist practice and be able to play with who my potential future teammates would be. And that's a great way for the existing team to, meet the prospective senior, get a feel for their play style, how they would mesh with the group. And it's a great tool to not only evaluate skill and talent and things like that, but also just see how me as a senior will mesh with my future teammates. So, when I was at Jamestown, we did this all the time online. We also, when it worked out, when a student came for a campus visit, which is a super important thing for a lot of schools, just to be able to get a student on campus, meet with faculty, meet with the coaches in person, be able to talk to financial aid and some of the other departments on campus that are really important during that admission cycle and that recruiting cycle. If it worked, we would have them, stay after, eat supper with us, and then come and actually work out with the team that night, and maybe fly home the next day or drive home after practice. So those are really common things that you'll see across the board. And every school, like I said, will have different recruiting tactics or different tools that they use to kind of go through this, but there's a lot of similarities based on where you're at in that process. And yeah, just trying to get everything done before the summer and so that you have that time to adjust, like Aaron was saying. Where you're going to school, 3 months before it happens, and who your teammates are, who your coach is going to be, and you can start to make those adjustments and get mentally prepared to, moving away for the first time for a lot of kids. So it's a great way to grow and meet people and get in touch with your future program through this cycle. So next up on the board is, how can students get prepared? And this is another one where, I listed a bunch of stuff on the board here for the next 2 slides. This is not all encompassing. There's other things that you can do, but I kind of just picked out the highlights of like what I would say, are some of the more important ones. So, there's 2 pieces to this puzzle here when you talk about how do I prepare to go into a college team or go into the recruiting process. And one is like what I kind of call like standard college prep, and then one is like your actual esports prep. Every school, no matter what, you're going to have to apply and get accepted to be able to be on a college team. So, like it or not, standardized testing are a big part of that. I know when I left University of Jamestown, it was becoming less and less of a focus. And maybe Aaron, you have a little bit more of a handle on this than I do now. But standardized testing, unfortunately, is a requirement or a benchmark for a lot of admission. And that'll be something that you're going to want to be able to look at a school, look at their minimum requirement, or look at what their requirements for test scores are, and make sure that you're prepared. And when you actually take that test, you get the scores that you need to be able to be accepted. There's a lot of things that go into actually being accepted to a college, but ACT, SAT scores are often a big one, or at least they were when I was a coach just a couple of years ago. You'll also want to get in touch with your admissions counselors. So talk to, whoever it is that covers your school. A lot of times colleges will break out the United States or the US and Canada or other countries. They'll break out territories for their reps, and Aaron might have a couple of states and I might have a couple of states, or Aaron might have some cities and I might have some cities within the same territory. Just depends on kind of how that admissions department is structured. But you want to get in touch with that counselor. A lot of the times they'll come in and do school visits before COVID. and actually come into the schools, talk to, the senior class, and explain, this is what our school is about. So you want to get in touch with that counselor and then start to schedule a campus visit. That was one of the things that when I was coaching was so important, to be able to actually bring a student onto campus and actually show them what we were all about. It's one thing to be able to talk at a student over the phone for an hour and say, yeah, our cafeteria is awesome, or the dorms are great, or this professor is amazing. But actually getting a student on campus and they can physically walk around, see where they're going to live and go to school, and be a part of that esports team too, be able to see the facility. Those are super important, steps, and really important in deciding which school you want to go to. And then finally, kind of as part of this standard college prep, I put in clean up your social media. I as a coach looked at, if you were on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, that was part of, if all things are equal, your character and who you are is really portrayed through social media. So, we took a look at, Twitter profiles and Instagram posts, and tried to get a sense of who you were outside of school. And just so that we knew, that you would be the right fit for our team. I know that's a lot. Aaron, do you have anything to kind of add on to this like standard college prep section here?
Yeah, so I think you touched on a lot of things, and one of the things because of COVID, a lot of schools now are going test optional. I know we're test optional at least for right now with COVID being the way it is right now, to where if a student has a 3.0 GPA, they can get automatically accepted. But it helps their case on academic scholarships to take that test. So there's just good and bad things about that right now. Definitely getting in touch with your admissions counselor is a great point. I know so many students, especially in the esports realm, they only want to talk to the coach, but the cog that gets the gears working is the admissions counselor. They're able to get your application process, get your transcript process, get everything ready for the coach to be actually offer you. All the coach can do really is put it in verbal terms until you're accepted, and then you get that actual offer. So that's a great point. And then scheduling campus visits, obviously that's a point right now that it's just difficult, but that's a very, very important point that goes back to the original slide of knowing your college, knowing if this is a good fit, knowing if this is a university you want to spend the next 4 years, 2 years at. So for right now, a lot of universities aren't allowing students on campus. We are, and there's a lot of challenges that go along with that just because of COVID and everything like that. But one thing that I've taken, that I've done that's been beneficial for my out-of-state students, as well as just those students that can't come for whatever reason, whether it be finances or just distance. I do a virtual tour, and everybody's like, well, everybody has a virtual tour. How is that any different? Well, I take it a step further. I'm on the call with them doing the virtual tour, talking about, okay, this is where you might have class, and this is the type of classes that you'll have in this building, and talking about just the intangibles. Everybody can look at a campus map or a virtual tour, but it's another thing to talk in-depth terms and kind of relate it to their perspective and saying, hey, this is where you could be, and putting in their terms, using you and getting them excited that that you're putting them already on the campus and putting them in that atmosphere. It really gets them excited, gets them to be already a part of the university ahead of time. And then exactly what you said, cleaning up social media. We actually had a case, I want to say either last year or the year before. We had a prospective student that we were, very interested in. And then something happened, whether it be a hacking or something on social media, and that was a big red flag. Up until that point, everything had been great, good to go. And then, we found that out, and it was like, whoa, let's pump the brakes. Let's do some more investigation. Let's see if this is an actual player that we really want to be a part of the program. And that's just something that high school students aren't really thinking about. They're, whether they get in matches and they're like, well, they're frustrated, or they're just trying to deal with, solo queuing up with just random people. There's a lot of frustration that goes along with esports in that realm, that high school students have to almost protect themselves if they are going into those realms, that they have to make sure that they don't post anything, or they're viewing themselves in a professional light, even though, they made their Twitter account when they were 12, 13 years old. That's going to relate to when they're going to college or high school, all those decisions and ultimately can determine, what a university is going to offer or what a university is going to say. So that's definitely some interesting points. The only other thing that I would add to standard college prepping is just managing emotions. The college process, I can tell you from day one, when you're starting to look to when you sign, it is a roller coaster of emotions. Even if you know you're set in your zone, you're like, I'm going there, I'm going there. I love it, love the university, love the teachers. It's still going to be an emotional process because you're dealing with leaving home. Your parents are like, oh, I don't want you to leave. Or they're like, yep, hit the road, Jack. I'm gonna build something in your room, so to speak. So there is a wave of emotions. There's ebb and flow to everything that you guys are doing. But as a coach or as an admissions counselor, that's one of the things that they're there to kind of minimize those lows and celebrate the highs, so to speak. So that's one thing that as a coach, I'm constantly staying in communication with our recruits, even after, we sign a kid. So we signed a kid, they're on the team. I'm checking in with them periodically throughout the school year, just making sure, hey, how's the grades going? How's the team looking? Oh, that's frustrating. I understand that. Let's work through that. Just until they're able to, start a full on practice, just because they are high school students and they're not able to practice all the time with us, unlike our college students are right now. So I think that's the one thing that I would add to the standard college prep, that a lot of people don't think about. That is an important thing, especially now in today's terms where there's not a lot of socializing except for maybe a couple times in classes and that type of thing. So
yeah, great point. um okay, so moving into kind of like preparing your esports profile and kind of making sure that you as a player or you as a support kind of back of the house staff person are ready to have these conversations with actual college teams. This list could be a mile long, but I kind of just picked out a few that I think every student should do just to give them a leg up and to help kind of at least prepare them to start that process. And just a couple of them, create accounts for the recruiting websites. Be Recruited, especially, I know, is a free service for students that can jump in and create a profile and actually say, I am Josh Knutson. I live in Fargo, North Dakota. I'm a senior at, let's say, Fargo High School. I play League of Legends. I'm a Diamond 3 player. Here's links to my film or my profile. Here's my KDA, my favorite champions I play. Here's my academic information. It's a great, just like resume that you can build out that college teams will look for, and be able to say, okay, when I'm looking for a player to fit a specific role or a specific game that I'm recruiting for, I'm going to go to those sites and see who's signed up and see if any of them are worth jumping out to and getting on the phone and actually calling them. So NCSA, I think, maybe has a small fee for creating a profile. That I'm not sure. But there's a ton of different websites or recruiting discords or things like that you can join, that will help you kind of start that process with a little bit extra. And like I said, it kind of builds out like a resume for you as a student to be able to, say, this is me on a piece of paper, give me a call. Next part of that is pull together game film to share with coaches. And this is, something where a lot of kids will think, okay, I'm going to put together a highlight reel that's like 30 seconds of my best clips, and I'm going to send that to all of these coaches. While that's good, I will tell you that the more valuable film is going to be like a 5-minute clip of a team fight you lost in the state championship last year, or a clip of a Rocket League game where you worked really well with your teammates, but it was 3, 4, 5 minutes long. When coaches are evaluating players through film, more is better, in the sense of, I want to be able to see like an actual sequence play out. That's great if you send me a highlight film. It's awesome to be able to see your highest of highs, but that's not going to be you as a player 99% of the time. So to really give, a sense of who you are as a player when you're submitting videos, make sure it's a little bit longer, and that you also have your voice comms in there if possible. Being able to hear a player talk during a situation in game is super valuable, because you can be the most mechanically skilled player in the world, but if you don't talk to your teammates, that's a big red flag, or something that as a player you're going to have to work for and work on to get better. So that's just kind of a couple notes about film. It's great to have a library. What I told a lot of players was, just make a Google Drive and share it with me. And, if you're playing one night and you're solo queuing, like snip one game and throw it in there like once a week or something like that. Or, take a look at, if you guys have a game, just post a link to the Twitch VOD in the Google Drive, and then share that with the coach that you're talking to at the college level and say, hey, hey coach, here's our game from this week. Just wanted to make sure that you had the video. Those are awesome steps to be able to help out with, the coach learning who you are as a player. And then finally, and this is kind of like a newer thing, but they're starting to pop up in a lot of different places, is actual scouting combines. So one that's actually, I'm really excited for is the Intel Aspires event here, where they have like 250 colleges signed up to participate in this. They're running a tournament over the course of a couple weeks. I think it might be a couple months. But it's actually like a scouting tournament so that college teams can watch high schoolers play, or, vice versa. To be able to say, okay, hey, I'm watching, Aaron play Fortnite over here, and I can see him play in a game on this day. I know exactly when I can tune in and watch him live. And then next week I can do the same thing. Those are great events to be looking at, especially if you're really serious about trying to go to a college program and make an impact. Those are great tools to be able to get yourself noticed, along with reaching out to the schools that you're really interested with, and just saying, hey, directly, I would love to talk to the esports coach. Aaron, anything to add here on kind of this esports prep section?
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing that I would add is, just letting the coaches know when you go live, whether that be with your high school team or just you just going live with your, just your friends. Just make sure your friends understand the college coach is watching. That's one thing I've ran into a couple times in I hear on their comms, hey, a coach is watching. Don't do anything dumb. But I mean, that helps me see you in game. Yeah, I might not be able to watch the entirety of your your stream, but at least I'm able to pick up on a couple things and say, okay, cool, this is what I'm looking for, or this is things that they can work on and just adapt it. Some other things that I've done is I have a couple good relationships with a couple high school coaches, and they'll send me their entire team, and I'll just watch them practice for a little bit, and I'll watch them play a couple of games, and I'm like, okay, I'm giving them pointers as I'm coaching them, and then that helps me build the relationships with those students to say, okay, I'd love to, recruit you and be a part of my team for this reason. So I've done that a couple of times, and I actually just had a video review session with one of my incoming players this spring, who's a non-traditional student who didn't go to college in the fall. So I was just watching them play, and I was giving them pointers in game while they were playing, so they can start identifying different pieces. And not everybody's going to be able to do that, but that's another piece that builds into that esports prep that not a lot of people are thinking about. And then as a coach, just talking to your esports advisor or just talking to your counselor and saying, hey, can we have some esports coaches come in and do presentations, especially with like COVID-19. It's a great resource for Discord and Zoom and all these resources to say, okay, we have Central Methodist coming on Friday at 3:00 to present about their program, about college esports and what you should be doing, and just getting them interested. Even if they're not interested in Central Methodist University at all, at least they're getting insights on what collegiate esports is, how they should be prepping themselves using these tools and resources that are listed here. That's just a benefit. And that's where it really takes off for esports. And esports is growing not because there's so many colleges or there's not so many high schools. It's really just the students that are playing these video games are asking for more resources, are asking for more attention. They're asking for more ways to show themselves, show their skills, and get their names out there. So anything you can do, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, anything. Like, I'm on all of them, and I have my notifications set. If anybody puts like looking for college, it automatically notifies me and says, hey, talk to this kid. So it's a great resource using social media, especially for these resources and tools.
Definitely. Okay, last little section here before we get to the Q&A. How can you as a high school coach help? You know, at the end of the day, esports recruiting is very similar to traditional recruiting. You know, yes, we're playing esports and not basketball and not football, but a lot of those same processes are very similar to how the baseball team recruits or how the volleyball team recruits. In fact, like when I was at Jamestown, I would meet with our women's volleyball coach, who was kind of like my coaching mentor. And I would sit down with John and say, hey, you know, Coach Hagerly, give me some pointers. You know, what are your processes that work that we can apply to the esports team? So a lot of that, you know, translates across the board. So if you're a high school staff member and you are familiar with how traditional sports do recruiting, how, you know, the football team gets recruited every year, a lot of those things can apply to esports. And you as coaches can, honestly, the biggest thing you can do is be an advocate for your players. You know, reach out to college teams with that student and say, hey, you know, Coach Shockley, I've got a student here who would really love to talk to you about playing Rocket League next year. You know, and being able to be a little bit proactive with the students that you know on your high school team that want to play in college. And start reaching out with them and pointing them in the direction of schools that have recruited students in the past, kind of like we said, building out like a pseudo pipeline. Just saying, hey, you know, this is a great college. We've had a lot of players go there in the past. You should maybe look into them. Or, you know, if the student's not interested, be a little proactive and say, okay, well, who else can we look out for? You know, help your players, you know, fine tune their game so that they're as college ready as possible. You know, there is in some cases, there is a pretty big skill jump from high school to college. Sometimes it's pretty marginal. It really depends on, you know, who the student is, what program they're going into, what goals they have as a player. But, you know, just helping them kind of finish their, you know, their resume as a player and making sure that, you know, the weak parts of their game or the things that they need to work on, they kind of know what they really need to focus on during that senior year. And that's going to come up in practice organically, but it's a really big help to a student who wants to play in college. You know, maybe giving students more opportunities within the team, you know, naming team captains as seniors and giving them a little bit of leadership opportunities or, you know, having them do analyst work or other things within the program that get their feet wet in some of the areas that, you know, a college team finds really valuable. It's great to give students more opportunities in general. And, you know, if it can help your student receive a college scholarship or open up some doors, it's a great way for your program to benefit, but also that student to benefit moving forward into a college program. And, you know, maybe it's even meeting with coaches and saying, hey, you know, Aaron, I want you to come to Fargo High School and have, you know, lunch with me and my coaching staff and then meet all my players or, you know, something along those lines, or let's jump on a Zoom call and talk about your program and some of the students that we have and be an advocate for your students. A lot of times college coaches will call the high school coach directly and say, you know, hey, I need 5 minutes of your time to talk about Sarah. You know, what can you tell me about her? Because the college coach is really going to look for, you know, the firsthand knowledge of what a player is actually like in practice or in school. You know, a lot of the high school coaches are teachers in the school. So, you know, they see these students all day, whether it's in their class or in practice or at games and stuff. And that's a great way to really learn about a player, is talking with their coach and with their teachers. So those are just a couple of different ways to help. We've kind of talked about, you know, spreading the word and, you know, notifying coaches when your team goes live or things like that. But like I said, this list can go on and on and And I just picked out some of the highlights. Aaron, anything to add here before we kind of wrap up with Q&A?
Just the last thing I would say is making sure your students and just overall program just stay academically sound. So that senior year, they're not going to just take those classes that are the easy class or the class that they can blow off or whatever the case may be. Making sure that they prepare themselves for college. So taking a dual credit class, even if it's for public speaking or college comp 1 and 2, that's only going to help them in the long run. And it's tremendously cheaper to do dual credit classes than it is to have a full-on class at a university. So just preparing them in that regard. And then just the simple fact of, just kind of enjoying their senior year as much as they can. It goes by so quickly that they're so focused on, oh, I got to know where I'm going. Oh, I have to know the major. Oh, I have to do all this. I have to do that. And I have prom and I have, senior night and all this stuff. Yeah. It goes by so quickly that they just have to enjoy it. And as coaches, you have to kind of be that voice of reason and saying, guys, it's okay. Enjoy yourselves. Enjoy your players, because as soon as it's over, then you go on to the next stage of your life and your career. So those are the biggest things that, I try and instill in the high school coaches that I talk to. And I obviously they want their kids to go on to the next level, and I get that. And that's a perfect idea, but just making sure they do it in the right way. Making sure it's an enjoyable thing for them, because so many times, so many recruits are talking to me and they're like, oh, I'm so stressed out. I don't know what to do. And it's just, you have to be that voice of reason and just say, everything's okay. Take it one day at a time. We'll work with the coach. We'll work with the, scholarship. We'll do all that fun stuff. And that's really the thing. That's really what it comes down to, is just having an enjoyable experience. And then moving on to the next stage of your career. So, but yeah, those are all great points that I definitely hope that all coaches would be advocates for their players in those regards.
Definitely. And one other real quick thing that I just thought of is, if your program doesn't have social media, make a social media page for your players, or like for your team, to be able to share results, tweet links, and tweet at college teams and say, hey, look at our results from this week. We had some great plays by so-and-so, or, so much of esports lives on social media. And if your high school team doesn't have a page yet in one platform or another, maybe think about doing that as just a way to help spread the word and spread some exposure. So with that, we're just going to kind of jump over, if there's any Q&A questions that we haven't gotten to yet, please feel free to shoot them off in the chat now. We'll keep it open here for a couple more minutes. I don't think we've had many come through in the meantime. So Aaron, either that means we rocked it or everybody's asleep. So, but I just want to say thank you one more time to Aaron for being with us tonight. It's really great to have your expertise and your knowledge, being able to have that shared tonight for those that were able to join us live. And then, all of the people that'll watch this as a VOD afterwards. Just thank you again for being a part of the panel tonight and sharing the good news.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and best of luck with everything. High school coaches, program admins, if you ever need anything or have any questions, definitely just let me know, and I'll be resource for you guys going forward.
Awesome. So we haven't had any questions come through. Aaron, how is the best way to get a hold of you if people do have questions?
Yeah, so we have an brand new esports website. It rolled out late last year, and now it's in full swing. Esports.centralmethodist.edu. That has all my contact information. That has all my assistants or scheduling, everything on there. So if you want to ever watch our game or need to contact me, everything is on there, as well as my Discord and everything else. So
awesome. Perfect. Thanks so much. And then if anybody needs to get a hold of myself, just jknutson@bitespeed.com is my email. Feel free to reach out if you have questions or just want to say hi. I love to talk about esports and definitely are here if you need me. So with that, I think we're going to say goodnight. I really appreciate everybody who joined us. Take care, stay safe, and I guess happy Halloween, because that's in a couple.
All right, buddy. You take it easy.